Welcome, this is the Area Factoring Application Worksheet. We'll be going through this question by question, and I may break it up into several videos. If you feel like you have the answer to one of the questions, feel free to jump to the next question. It is my suggestion that you pause in between each question and before I start going over the question to see if you can get the answer first, and then check your answer based on what I did. If you get the incorrect answer, look back at the work and you'll figure out how to do it from there. Okay, let's look at question number 1. I've went ahead and pre-drawn a rectangle for us since we're talking about a rectangle. Okay, now it says we want the area of a rectangle. Area, if you recall, from a rectangle is found by doing the length times the width. Okay, and in this question, it's telling us that the area is this. Okay, so it gives us this trinomial function. Expression, and it wants us to find the dimensions. Well, the dimensions means the length and the width. So it wants us to find the two things that we multiply together to form this trinomial. Okay? Well, when you have a trinomial and you want to find two things that multiply to get it, that's also known as factoring. Okay? And so the first thing you want to try is to find a GCF, or a greatest common factor. Because if you can find that, then the dimensions are length and width. The first thing would be the length, the second thing would be the width. Okay? And if we look here, since there's no number in front here, or technically an understood 1, the greatest number that they can have in common is a 1. Then we look for the letters. Do they all three terms have the same letter? Well, this one doesn't have any letters, so there cannot be a common factor in letters for any of these, and 1 is the greatest common factor. So really it means there's no common factor, or greatest common factor. So then the second step was, when you have a trinomial, you want to try to do the x factor. Okay, where you have a times c on the top and b on the bottom. If it helps, that's the attic and the ceiling in the top, and the basement on bottom. Okay? So, let's try to do the x factor, or the x games. Okay? So we'll put a times c on the top, b on the bottom. Our a is found by the number on the g squared, or the x squared, or the squared term. Our b is found by the letter that doesn't have an exponent, and our c is the number with no letter, no variable. Okay? And so we're going to go 1 times negative 10, which is negative 10, and then our b is positive 3. Okay? So now we're looking for the numbers that will multiply to get a negative 10, and add or subtract to get us a 3. And there's a shortcut way to figure out whether you're adding or subtracting and what the signs will be. And that's by looking at this sign right here. Okay? This sign is a negative, which means you'll subtract to get a 3 with the factors. And in order for numbers to subtract, they have to have different signs. So one of these is going to be a positive, and one of these is going to be a negative. Okay? Now you can use trial and error if you don't understand this rule, but it's good to memorize it. Okay? And it's also helpful to know that a positive times a negative is a negative. Okay? So now we need to know what factors will multiply to give me 10, so that we can figure out which ones will subtract to give me a 3. Well, I know 1 times 10 and 2 times 5. And so you do 10 minus 1 and 5 minus 2, and you'll get 9 and you'll get 3. Well, there's that number 3 that we're looking for. Don't really pay attention to the signs as much, because you can figure out the signs later. But we know that 5 minus a 2 gives us a 3. So now we need to figure out, okay, does the 5 go here, or does the 5 go here? Okay, well, since this one is a positive, that means our bigger number is going to be the positive number as well. So 5 is our bigger number, it's our positive, and then the 2 by default falls here. And check, positive 5 times negative 2 is negative 10, and positive 5 minus 2 is positive 3. So these are our two numbers. Okay? So step 3, you have two choices. One, if there's a number in the front of the g squared, if our a is a number other than 1, we would do the box. And if our a is 1, then we don't have to do the box, we can just write our answer. So if a equals 1, do your parentheses, okay? You put your g in your g. If a is greater than 1, then we do the box, okay? So those are the rules. So if we look here, a is 1, so then we're just going to go straight into our factors, okay? We'll put our g first, and then we'll write our numbers that were circled over here that we just found, plus 5 and minus 2. And that becomes our answer because our length times our width. This is my length, and this is my width. Now, does it matter if you label them differently? Absolutely not. It does not matter which one comes first and which one comes second. It's just call one of them the length and one of them the width. And as long as you have the correct factors, you'll have the right answer. Moving on to question number 2 and 3. Since they are linked, we will do them together. Okay? So it says the area of a square is this. Find the length of each side. Well, the thing we need to know about a square is that all sides are the same. Okay? So they'll be equal. So I'm going to draw the best square that I can draw for you guys. Close enough for me. Okay? So we have our square. This side's going to be equal to this side. But we have a trinomial, so we need to factor it and see if we can get the same on both sides. Okay? So I'm going to take m squared plus 10m plus 25. Now, if this is a true square, when we factor this, you'll get the same thing for both factors. Okay? And my guess is it's going to be an m and a 5. But let's just check it out and see. So it's a trinomial. Is there a GCF? Well, there's a 1 here. And then, so that means there's really not going to be a number GCF. And they don't all have a letter. So there can't be a letter GCF either. So there is no GCF. So now you're going to try the x. And the x is a times c with a b in the bottom. So this is our a, our b, and our c. So you have 1 times 25. And you get positive 25. And then you get positive 10 down on the bottom. Okay? So now we need to figure out what will multiply to get us 25 and add to get us 10. Well, 1 times 25 and 5 times 5 are the only numbers that give us 25. And so you got 26 and you have 10 when you add these together. So it has to be 5 times 5. So you use 5 and 5 here. When you add, they have to be the same signs. And the only way for the same signs to be positive is if they're both positive as well. So 5 plus 5, 10. 5 times 5, 25. So these are our two numbers. Okay, and then in the previous question, we said that if it's a is 1, which we do have, then you can just go straight to your factors. And if it's more than 1, then you have to do the box. And since a is 1, we go straight to our factors, and we'll see that we get an m and an m, and you have plus 5 and plus 5. Okay? So we notice that they are the same, and each side is m plus 5. Okay, so it says find the perimeter of the square in question 2. Well, perimeter It means we add all sides. Well, we have a square, so that means we have x plus 5, x plus 5, x plus 5, and x plus 5 around this square. So if we add them all up, how many x's do we have? We have 4 x's, and we have 4 5's. Well, 4 times 5 is 20. So this becomes our perimeter. You can think of it like x plus 5, x plus 5, x plus 5, x plus 5. Also, if you're struggling, so you have 4 x's, 5 plus 5 is 10, 10 plus 5 is 15, 15 plus 5 is 20. Okay? So that's another way you could think about it as well. Okay? Question number 4 says the volume of a rectangular prism is 8m cubed minus 128m. Okay? Find the length of all 3 sides. How many sides are binomials? Okay, so this has got 2 different questions. First, they want us to find the length of all the sides. Then they want me to answer how many sides are binomials. Okay, so since we need to find all 3 sides, we're going to take this and we're going to factor it because the volume is the length times the width times the height. Okay, we have a rectangular prism, so I'm going to do my best to draw one. It's going to be bad, but there it is. Okay, and so it's going to look something like that. And so you'll have your length, your width, and your height. So it has 3 dimensions that we have to find. So pretend it's an area, and then just factor it like you would. In order to have a volume, one of them is going to have to be the GCF. One of them is going to have to be a factor that we find from doing a trinomial or binomial factoring, and the other one's going to have to be the other factor. Okay? So, we take our 8m cubed minus 128m. Okay? Step number 1, we're going to look for a GCF. Okay? So, I want to find a GCF. So I say, well, what will multiply to give me 8 and also multiply to give me 128? Well, you want to use the smaller number to determine that, and you're going to find all the factors of it. So there's 1, 2, 4, and 8 are the numbers that will multiply to get me 8. And then you want to start with the biggest one and work your way down until one of them works. So let's start with 8. Well, 8 divide 128. Well, 8 won't go into 1, but 8 goes into 12 one time with a remainder of 4. Okay? So we have 1 with a remainder of 4. And then 8 goes into 48 6 times. And so that gives us 16. So it will go into it. So we can take everything and divide it by 8. Okay? And then we look, do they all have an m? Yes, they do. They both have an m, so we can pull an m out. Do they have more than one m? Nope, because this one only has 1. So you take really the smallest m that you have. So there's 3 m's here, and there's only really 1 m here. So you can only take 1 m out. So now if I was writing my answer, I would say the length equals the width equals, and the height equals. Okay? And the length, let's just call that the first measurement that we get, or the first factor we get. And the first one that we can take out is 8m. Okay? So now we're going to divide the 8m out of everything. 8 divided by 8 is 1. And then if you have 3 m's and you're dividing it by 1m, that's really like subtracting the m's. You have 3 minus 1, which is 2m's left. And then we just said negative 128 divided by 8 is going to be 16. If you have 1m divided by 1m, well, they kind of cancel out, or you do 1 minus 1, and you get this. Okay? So you say, okay, well, I still have a binomial. Well, a binomial, if you can factor, you first want to try to take a GCF out, and then if you have a binomial, you want to try to find the difference of squares. Okay? Well, difference really means subtraction of, and this is short for perfect squares. Okay? So you look for an even power, and then you look for perfect squares. And you'll find those from like 1 times 1 equals 1, 2 times 2 equals 4, 3 times 3 equals 9, and so on and so forth. Okay? So you ask yourself, do we have a perfect square here or an even power? Yes, we do. 2 is an even number. So that one's a perfect square, and it's really like m times m. Okay? And then 16, is that a perfect square number? Yeah, because it's 4 times 4. Okay? So that's a perfect square also. So that means that we can break it down into two different factors. Okay? Gotta make sure it's subtraction though. If it's addition, it will not work. So what you're going to do is you're going to look at everything that's to the left of the sign, and you're going to basically split up the things that you multiply together. For letters, it's always just half as many as here. So if I had a 4, that'd be m squared and an m squared. If I had 6, it'd be to the third and to the third. Okay? So since it's a square, you put an m and you put an m. There's nothing else on this side of the sign. So now that you're at the sign, you're always going to put a plus and a minus. And the order doesn't matter. You could put a minus and a plus if you want. Okay? And then you're going to split up everything that's on this side, starting with a number. Okay? 16 broke down into 4 and a 4. And if we had a letter, you would put a letter on the end too. But since we have just a 16, this becomes the final part of that. And then each of these becomes a factor or a dimension in our thing. So these are the dimensions. So that's the answer to question number 1. Okay? Find the length of all three sides. Now it says how many sides are binomials? Well, binomial means it's two terms. Doesn't necessarily mean it has two things in it. It means it has two terms. So something separated by one sign. So if you look, our width and our height have one thing separated by a sign and another thing. So there are two binomials. Okay? So that's the answer to our second question. The length is not a binomial because this is 8m, which is one term, because there's not a sign separating it like these have. Okay? Question number 5. It says the area of a rectangle is 10w minus 19w minus 15. If one of the sides is 2w minus 5, what is the length of the other side? This is a great question for them to ask in a multiple choice situation because it only gives you one option for the answer. Okay? But what we're going to do is, since it's worded very similarly to all the other questions, we should know by now that it is a factoring question. And anytime you see a trinomial, you want to instantly think factor, because that's most of what we do with trinomials. I'm not saying that every time you see a trinomial you should factor. You should just think that is an option right when you see one. Okay? So now we see a trinomial. There's one, two, three terms, tricycle, three wheels, trinomial, three terms. Okay? First thing you always want to look for is a GCF. Well, 10, 19, and 15 don't have anything in common because 19 is a prime number, which means only 1 and 19 go in it, and neither of these have a 19 in them. Okay? So there's no GCF number. So then we look, W, W, but no W. So there's no number in there, so there's no GCF. So number 2, you need to try the X. Okay? And so you get A times C and B. Okay? And so we're going to do A times C, which is 10 times 15, and it's negative 15, so you get negative 150. Okay? And then negative 19 will come down for our B. So now we want the numbers that will give us negative 150 when we multiply them and subtract to get us negative 19. Okay? So subtract right here, which means we'll have a positive and a negative. Okay? And our bigger number is going to be the negative number. Okay? Now, you're going to want to list these out because 150 has more factors than we'll be able to just kind of figure out in our head. So you have 1 and 150, and 150 minus 1 is 149. Well, that's not 19. Okay? So then you have 2 and 75. 75 minus 2 is 73. You have 3 and 50. So 50 minus 3 is 47. We're getting closer. Okay. 4 doesn't go in evenly. 5 and 30. So you do 30 minus 5 is 27. We're getting really close. 6 and 25. And so you do 25 minus 6, which is 19. So we found it. Yes. 6 and 25. And now our bigger number, like we said before, is going to be negative. So you put the 25 there, and the 6 there, and positive 6 times 25 is 150, and then 6 minus 25 is negative 19. Okay? So at this point, there are two different ways we can factor this from here, since we have a number in the front. If we have a number in the front, you can do the box method, or you can do a factoring GCF alternative. So if you like the box method, keep watching. If you like the other method, just skip over the box part with your fast forward and pay attention to that. Okay? So, using the box method, we know we need to do it because we have this 10 in the front. So I'm going to draw a box. Okay? You put your A term in the front, so that 10W squared, and you put your C term at the end. And the whole purpose of doing the X factor was to get these two terms to break up the negative 19W. So you have plus 6W here and negative 25W there. Okay? So now we're going to take out a GCF going left and a GCF going up. 10 and 25 have a 5 in common. They both have a W. Okay? 6 and 15 have a 3 in common. They don't both have a W. And this one's positive, so that one's positive. 10 and 6 have a 2 in common. 2 times 5 is 10. 2 times 3 is 6. Okay, so we've got the right number. And then they both have a W, so you can take out a W. 25 and 15 have a 5 in common, and then just double check 5 times 5, 5 times 3, okay? And then you want to take the sign of this one, okay? And do they both have a W? Nope, So these become our two factors, 2w minus 5, which they already told us, and then we have our other factor, which is 5w plus 3. So our other factor that they were looking for is this 5w plus 3. Okay? So if you like the box method and you don't want to learn another method, you can skip to question 6. And now we're going to start the other method. So if you don't like the box method, okay, then you might like the other method where you figured out your x, okay, and so now you're going to write two new parentheses. You're going to put your first term with just the letter, okay, and the number. Don't worry about the square in both parentheses, okay? You're then going to take the two numbers that we found over here and plug them in to our parentheses, okay? Now you're going to take out a GCF from both of these. Well, 10 and 6, they both have a 2 in common, okay? And 10 and 25 both have a 5 in common, okay? And so now, when you take these, you do 10 divided by 2, you get 5 and a W. And 6 divided by 2 is positive 3. And then 10 divided by 5 is a 2, and the W comes down, and negative 25 divided by 5 is negative 5. So see how you end up with the same factors as you did over here, and the one that's different from the 2W minus 5 is the 5W plus 3. So either way you get the right answer. Some people like the box, some people like the parentheses way. Either way they're the same, and you get the same answer. Question 6. Is it possible for a rectangle to have an area of 2w squared plus 11y plus 18 if the side lengths are binomials? Okay? So basically this is a yes or no question, but you need to have proof anytime you have a yes or no question. Okay? So if we have the area and we want to know the side lengths, what are they, then we need to basically figure out what two things multiply together to get our trinomial, which is another way of saying we need to factor. Okay? So we have a trinomial. First, we're going to take out a GCF if there is one. We look 2, 11, and 18. There's nothing that goes into those but 1, and then they don't all have a y, so there is no GCF. So 2, we need to try the x. Well, we have a times c and b on the bottom. This is our a, our b, and our c. Okay, so you got 2 times 18, which is positive 36. And then we have positive 11 on the bottom. We look what will multiply to give us 36 and add to give us 11. We have 1 and 36, 2 and 18, 3 and 12, 4 and 9, 5 and nothing, 6 and 6. Okay? Now, we need the numbers that will add to give us an 11. Okay? So, if we look, we do 36 plus 1. Well, that's 37. We do 18 plus 2, which is 20. We do 3 plus 12, which is 15. We do 4 plus 9, which is 13. And 6 plus 6, which is 12. And that means we have no other options. Do you see how nothing gives us an 11? If this is the case, then this is not factorable, which means we can't have two terms that multiply together that are binomials. So the answer to this one is no. Okay? Because this is not factorable. Also known as prime. Okay? Question number 7. The area of a rectangular book cover is this polynomial right here. The width of the book cover is this. What is the length? So basically it's asking us to factor this and then find the length. Okay? So if we look here, it says it's 2x minus 8. So we're trying to figure out what can we multiply 2x minus 8 by to get there. So let's factor it. So we get 4x squared minus 6x minus 40. Okay? So normally I would tell you to take out a GCF, but if you look here, this factor didn't have a GCF taken out. Okay? So maybe they didn't take out a GCF when they did theirs. But let's try it. Let's take out a GCF. Okay? So what goes into 4, 6, and 40? Well, that's a 2, because 4 won't go into 6, but 2 will go into 4, 2 will go into 6, and 2 will go into 40. Do they all have the same letter? Nope. Okay? So we're going to divide everything by 2. And don't forget about this little guy. He's going to go down in our answer. Okay? So you get 2x squared minus 3x minus 20. Okay? When you take out a GCF, it makes the number smaller, which means it's easier to do our other stuff. Step 2, we're going to try the x. So you do a times c, your b down here. You have 2 times negative 20, and you get negative 40, and then you have a negative 3. So we need the numbers that will multiply to give us negative 40 and subtract to get us a 3. So you got, well, 1 times 40, 2 times 20, 3 doesn't work, 4 times 10, 5 times 8, okay? So you got 40 minus 1, which is 39, 20 minus 2, which is 18, 10 minus 4, which is 6, and 8 minus 5, which is 3. So it's got to be 8 and 5. Okay? And then since it's a negative, we're going to have a positive and a negative. The bigger number will be negative. So we'll take the 8 and it'll be negative, and the 5 will be positive. Okay? And then like I've said before, there are 2 ways to do it when you have a front number like this. Okay, so the first way will be the box, and then I'll come back and show you how to do it without using the box in the second method. Okay, so if you don't like the box, skip forward until you see me writing down here in this region here, because I'm going to do the box over here. Okay, for the box method, you're going to draw the box. Okay, you're going to put in your a term, which will be the 2x squared, your c term, which is the negative 20. Okay, and then we're going to take our plus 5 and put an x on it, and then we're going to take our minus 8 and put an x on it in here, and then we're going to factor out a GCF from all the sides. 2 and 8 have a 2 in common. They both have an x. 5 and 20 have a 5 in common. They don't both have an x, and then we take the sign here, and then we take these don't have anything in common number-wise between 2 and 5, but they do both have an x, and then 8 and 20 have a 4 in common. They don't both have an x, and this is negative. Okay? So, you look and you get the 2 factors of 2x plus 5 and x minus 4. But the thing you cannot forget about is our GCF all the way over here. He goes in the front. Okay? So you say, well, I don't even see this 2x minus 8. Okay, well remember in the beginning when I said they probably didn't take out a GCF? What goes into both 2 and 8? A 2. And so if you pull the 2 out, what's left? An x and then a minus 4, right? So that looks like they multiplied the 2 and the minus 4. I mean the x squared minus the x minus 4. So we have a 2 out here, and we have an x minus 4. So it looks like they multiplied this 2 to both things in here, and that means that our missing side would be the 2x plus 5. Okay? And so this would be our final answer. That's the missing side. Okay? So now if you like the box method, move on to question 8. For those of you that like the alternate method, here it goes. Okay? So we've done the x. Okay? We found that 5 and negative 8. Completed our x here, our x game. So then you write your parentheses. You put your first term in. So you put that 2x in there in both sides. And then we're going to take our plus 5 and we're going to take our minus 8. And you look, and in this case, we don't really have to take one out because it says one of our factors is 2x minus 8. And here we have the 2x minus 8. And that leaves us with 2x plus 5 as our final answer. Okay? So, that's the answer to the question 7. Question number 8. Oops. Let's skip question 8. Well, I'll have to come back to question 8 in just a moment.